Hi, Professor. My name is Vikram Sharma. My student ID is 23266762. So I'm gonna make a video what I have grabbed from the from the week 2. So the first question is what is culture? So humans are social creatures. Since the down of Homo sapiens nearly 20 years ago, people have grouped together into communities in order to survive, living together. People developed forms of corporations which created the common habits, behaviors, and ways of life known as culture, from specific methods of children rearing to preferred techniques for obtaining food. The Peter Berger, who was born in 1929, argued that the culture is the product of uh, fundamental human predicament in 1967. Unlike other animals, humans lack the biological programming to live on their own. They require an extended period of dependency in order to survive in the environment. The creation of culture makes this possible by providing a kind of protective shield against the harsh impositions of nature. Culture provides the ongoing transmission of knowledge and stability that enables human existence. It allows humans to know that one plant is poisonous and other plant is edible, and so on. So, over the history of humanity, this has led to an incredible diversity in how humans have imagined and lived on Earth. The sum total of which Wade Davis, born in 1953, has called the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the entirely of all culture of is the ways of all is the entirely of all cultures, like the way of thinking, ways of being, and ways of orienting oneself on the earth. So first, almost every human behavior from shopping to marriage to expression of feelings is learned. In Canada, people tend to view marriage as a choice between two people based on mutual feelings of loves. In other nations and in other times, marriages have been arranged through an intricate process of interviews and negotiations between entire families, or in other cases, through a direct stream such as a mail order bride. So the second culture is innovative. The existence of different cultural practices reveals the way in which societies find different solutions to real life problems. The different forms of marriage are various solutions to common problem. The problem of organizing families in order to raise children and reproduce the species. As the structural functionalists argue that basic problem is shared by the different societies, but the solutions are same. This illustrates the point that culture is general is a means of solving problems. It is a tool composed of the capacity to abstract and conceptualize, to cooperate and coordinate complex collective endeavors, and to modify and construct the world to suit human purposes. Third culture, the third culture is restraining. Cultures retain their different patterns through times and impose them on their members. In this contemporary life, global capitalism increasingly impose a common cultural playing field on the cultures of the world. As a result of Canadian culture, French culture, Malaysian culture, Kazakhstani culture will share certain features like rationalizations and commodification, even if they also different in terms of languages, beliefs, dietary practices, and other ways of life. There are two sides to the response of local cultures to global culture. Different cultures adapt and respond to capitalism in unique manners according to their specific shared heritages. Local cultural forms have the capacity to restrain the changes produced by globalization. Moreover, unique local cultures are transported around the world due to global migration diasporas and media, leading to the diversifications of cultural practices in countries like Canada, as well as to innovative forms of cultural blending and hybridization. On the other hand, the diversity of local cultures is increasingly limited by homogenizing pressure of globalization. So there is a terrific dynamic within a culture of innovation and restriction, the cultural fabric of shared meanings and orientations that allows individuals to make sense of the world and their place within it can change with contact with other cultures, changes in the socio-economic formation, allowing people to re-envision and reinvent themselves, or it can remain stable, even rigid, and restrict change. So, culture and biology. The central argument put forward in this chapter is that human life is essentially meaningful and therefore it has to be understood first, though an analysis of the cultural practices, institutions that produce meaning, like that produce meaning means that makes sense. There, nevertheless, fascination in contemporary cultural persists for finding biological or genetic explanations for complex human behaviors that would seem to contradict the emphasis on culture. In one study, Shivers, who was a researcher, had a group of women smelled unwashed t-shirts worn by different men. The researchers argued that sexual attraction had a biochemical base in the histocompatibility signature that the women detected in a male pheromones left behind on the t-shirts. Women were attracted to the t-shirts of the man whose immune systems are different from their own. So in other study, Dean Hammer and his colleagues discovered that the some homosexual men possessed the same region of DNA on their X chromosome, which led which led them to argue the homosexuality was determined genetically by a gay gene. Others like there was a one study also found that the corpus callosum, the region of nerve fibers that connect the left and right brain hemispheres, was larger in a woman's brains than in man's. This study was done in 1982. Therefore, women were thought to be able to use both sides of their brains simultaneously when processing visuospatial information, whereas men used only their left hemisphere when processing visuospatial information. So this finding was said to account for gender differences that ranged from women's supposedly greater emotional intuition to man's supposedly greater ability in math, science, and parallel parking. In each of these three cases, the authors reduced complex cultural behavior, sexual attraction, homosexuality, cognitive ability, and to a simple biological determination. So, in each of these studies, the scientists' claim were quite narrow and restricted in a comparison of the conclusions drawn from them in the popular media. Nevertheless, they follow a logic of explanation known as biological determinism. So within sociology, this type of framework underlies the paradigm of sociobiology, which provides biological explanations for the evolution of human behavior and social organization. So, but however, a central problem of sociobiology as a type of sociological explanation is that while human biology does not vary greatly throughout history or between cultures, the forms of human associations do vary extensively. So to suggest that aggression is a biological characteristic means that it does not vary greatly throughout history nor between the cultures and is impervious to the social rules that restrict it in all societies. Yet, as Collins in 2008 notes that he took a notes from a biosociological perspective, the factor that needs to be explained is not the natural tendency to aggression by young men, but the unique social circumstances required for them to be able to overcome the barriers of confrontational tension and fear that make them aggression and violence difficult. The evolutionary argument suggests that violence should be easy for young men, whereas the research indicates that it is very hard and attempts to be violent often end in failure. So cultural universals, often a comparison of one culture to another will reveal obvious differences, but all cultures share common elements. So, the cultural universals are patterns or traits that are globally common to all societies. Uh, the example of culture universal is the kinship system. So, this was all the things, Professor, which I have grabbed from week 2. My name is Vikram Sharma, and my student ID is 2326762. Thank you, Professor.